our longstanding clients may have resisted or been unsure about online learning, online professional learning, and even blended learning for students. But I would like to say that this has been a, quote, silver lining of this pandemic is this push into 21st century skills and using technology as an amazing tool, as the amazing tool and tools that it is. And so with that, I'd like to jump in to our topic at hand, and I'm going to be presenting to you some of the instructional design tips that I've learned over the years and share with you and invite you to share and join the conversation if you're on our website or Facebook. Emily is monitoring the comments and we'll be able to hopefully integrate some of your ideas and some of your questions as well. So I'm Sarah Ottow, and I'm the founder of Confianza. As I mentioned before, I'm a former teacher, instructional coach, teacher trainer, principal trainer, and now full-time consultant and professional learning expert, I would like to say. And I'm always learning though, always building my expertise. And I learn from people just like you every day. And with that, I also wanted to mention that I'm the author of The Language Lens for Content Classrooms, which is a foundational and functional guidebook to support language learners, both English language learners along the continuum of proficiency levels, and all of our students, which we like to call academic language learners, or all of our students that benefit from supports and language-rich instruction and literacy embedded supports. So let's dive in to all things online learning. I'm going to try to talk about a lot of the things that I really love and use. And then again, I invite you to share, and I'm looking at the chat down here. Great to see you, Darlene and Emily, welcome, and others as well. So first things first, when we talk about online learning, it's important to get clear on what kinds. So as you can see here, we've got synchronous and we've got asynchronous. And you might be thinking, I've heard those terms and my district's using them, but what do they really mean? It's important to get on the same page about that. And I do love doing a little word study here, right? Synchronous, asynchronous. So A means opposite, synchronous with time as part of that. It means at the same time. And right now, if you're joining us live, this is synchronous learning, right? It's a video chat, it's Google Meet, Zoom, perhaps WebEx, whatever live video platform you're using, as well as discussions that moderated, like some of the chats on Twitter is synchronous. Some of them are slow chats, so they're a little more asynchronous, which means not at the same time. But I'm personally doing a ton of remote workshops right now and remote coaching, and that is definitely synchronous, right? That's at the same time we're learning together. And so the opposite of that, of course, is the asynchronous. And a lot of districts are grappling for this for the first time, both synchronous and asynchronous. I'm working with a few districts right now, and I've seen them grapple with platforms. So for example, Google Classroom, right? Or any kind of space that contains the discussions, the assignments, different apps provide asynchronous opportunities as well, like Nearpod, and even if you assign a Kahoot or other kinds of maybe watching a video that you did in Screencastify or anything like that, where kids are watching it on their own time. And by the way, all of this extends to adults as well. So I'm going to use kids and adults kind of back and forth, thinking that what these practices are good for is not just for our K-12, pre-K-12 learners, but also for adults as well if we're engaging in professional learning online. So keep in mind that difference between synchronous and asynchronous. Today, I'm going to focus quite a bit on synchronous, as I've had a lot of questions about it and kind of pulling back the curtain on what we've done at Confianza through the years and what we're trying to get better at every day on our synchronous at the same time, you know, kind of live PD that we do in supporting our schools. Okay. And I'd like to point out with this in mind, if you'd like a little deeper dive on some of the instructional design tips for language learning and language and content instruction, go ahead to our blog and check it out. There's a part 1 and a part 2. And right here is the preview from part 1, which is a shift in mindset and practice, where strategy 1 is teaching our students, not just our content area, and then definitely going into strategy 2, which is going beyond vocabulary, where vocabulary is essential for supporting all language learners, but we do know how important it is to go beyond that word level to sentence and discourse level. And so part 1 of the blog goes into those specific tips And that is there for you to share, to try things out, to connect and reflect your own practice. Part 2 on the blog goes into strategies 3 and 4. And as you can see here, it's all about strategy 3, using all 4 domains of language. And I've been doing a lot of work around this recently since the pandemic hit. And it seems like common sense, and I talk about it a lot. I think I say it like 3 or 4 times in my book. Common sense is not so common. And integrating all 4 domains of language seems like something that we would just do anyways, reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But we all need a reminder on that. I'm teaching online, as you'll discover in the blogs. I'm working with 1st and 2nd graders right now. And I'm constantly challenging myself to reflect and say, did I get them to speak, read, write, and listen enough? Or were they just listening today? Because that's not going to do it. We need all kids, especially English language learners, multilingual students, but again, all students, to embrace and have practiced their language through speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And I do recommend having a balance of those domains, both for online and face-to-face. And it gets exciting when we're doing synchronous and asynchronous, because we can actually do it in different ways. And there's a ton of tips out there and a ton of ideas that are coming out of the ELL world, which is just fantastic to share and to learn about. So strategy 3, balancing those domains. And then strategy 4, I can't say this enough. It's not just about building metacognition and not watering things down for students. We got to keep those standards high for all kids. The pathways to get up to reach those standards differ for the students. But it's also about building metalinguistic awareness. And you might be thinking, what is the difference? Metacognition and metalinguistic awareness. Well, metacognition is thinking about thinking, whereas metalinguistic awareness is thinking about language. And that's especially important for our kiddos acquiring a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th language in the target language of English, or if we're in a dual language setting, in multiple languages of academic language. And in the article, I share a little tip that is a really exciting one that I'm seeing some of my clients use, which is having students use the tried and true old school ESL strategy of contrastive analysis, comparing and contrasting differences and similarities in 2 languages. Contrastive analysis is very powerful. So I do encourage you to check out those blogs if you haven't already, and let us know what you think, and stay in touch and share with us your ideas as well. And so let's move on to some specific learning tips for when we're doing synchronous events. Again, whether it's a chat with our students, a remote workshop, or coaching with adults, any kind of live event. And I've tried to model that for you today. So the first thing is minimizing logistical issues. There's a lot to think about that you might not think about until you mess up or, realize that you didn't think about it. And so one thing is security. I know that Zoom is the platform we use, and a lot of districts use that as well as Google Hangout or WebEx and others. They've taken extra measures for security. So I do want to make sure that you know about the security issues, whether you're working with kids or adults, because everybody deserves a space, confident space, in comfortable and confidential space in which to learn. And so make sure that you know your security protocols and that you're being clear about who can join that event. That's really important. The other piece is around a couple other pieces. One is just screen sharing. I try to just close down. I have several monitors here in my office that I've been working at for years, and I close down the windows that I'm not using, because you can accidentally share the wrong thing, which wastes time and also just might, betray your own privacy and other things that you're working on or other projects that you're doing. So keep that in mind. And then the final logistical issue I recommend is getting to know the platform that you're using. So I'm going to use Zoom as an example today, because that's what we use when we're doing our events with our clients, and also for my own teaching of my kiddos, is figure out how to move the toolbox and how to move the bar with the faces, and figure out where the chat is. If you're holding an event, orient the folks to do that, because it could be as simple as the platform might plug in the faces sort of over the material on the slide, and people are going there, I can't see it, when they don't realize that they can just move it, they can drag it themselves. So again, might seem like common sense, not so common when technology is new for so many people. Having been doing this for years, I do recommend just orienting everyone, your students, your colleagues, whomever. They might not know about gallery view, for example, with Zoom. They might just be looking at the speaker, larger than life. So we want to minimize those issues. The second piece here I love, and it's again another old school ESL strategy, which works for all of us, and that's called front loading. Back in the day, we used to call it a priori teaching, and it literally means just teaching in advance. And it's great for kids and it's great for adults. At Confianza, how do we do this? Well, we actually, before an event, most of the time, we do send out an article and or video or other kind of activity to both connect to background knowledge and even activate background knowledge. By doing that in advance, you're actually doing a flipped classroom, which is really exciting. And having been involved in some really cool schools over the years, I've seen flipped classrooms at really exciting levels where kids are just watching a 10-minute video at home. And then by the time they get to school, they're moving into application level. So what do I mean by that? I mean, let's not waste time by lecturing, right? If we can take care of that through an article or video or some kind of, event of pre-learning experience. It's really powerful, again, kids and adults alike. So I definitely recommend the front loading if you're not doing that already and making the most of time. And then it goes into the metacognition that I talked about earlier, because we know that we have different levels of cognitive rigor. We have, sort of base recall, and then we have more advanced, comparing and contrasting, application and synthesis. We want to make the most of the time together synchronously and get into that application level. If we're just focusing on recall, we're not making the most of our time. Kids can do recall often, on their own with enough practice, with enough support. Same with adults. But it all depends on knowing your students and knowing your participants. But also say, just think about, using the time in the most constructive ways possible. And front loading is a great tip for that. The other piece is the chunk and chew. I can't say enough about these old school ESL strategies. Chunk and chew is literally what it sounds like. A bit of information, you chunk it up, and then you chew it. So it's not about giving a million things at once, just a little bit, and then process, a little bit, and then process. And I talk about this in the blog that I mentioned before, part 1, for teaching language and content online. It's literally, again, all about those 4 domains of language. It's speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So what do I mean by that in synchronous learning? Well, if we were doing a workshop right now, I'd have you turn and talk to an extent, put you in a breakout room, or have you use the chat. Use the tools that you have available to make sure that your participants, whether they be adults or students, are able to chunk the information through listening or reading, and then chew it through speaking or writing, or both, or all 4. Because we don't want to just be talking, right, without the opportunity to process. Got to chew it, if you will. So love that tip. It's one of the first ones I learned about years and years and years ago, 20 years ago when I entered the field of ESL. And I think it's a great one for ALL, right, for all. The second to last one, right, is the high fives, is maximizing the ownership. And that is essential for face-to-face learning with any age level. And it is especially essential online. I just spent the morning doing coaching sessions with clients and checking in with many leaders whom I support. And we're waning here out on the East Coast where I live. Like, we've got another month of school, and boy, kids and teachers alike and coaches and leaders, we're all kind of going, ooh, how do we do this for another month? We didn't plan for this, right? We didn't say there's going to be a pandemic. Let's plan out these awesome, beautiful thematic units with virtual field trips, with, fantastic supports and teaching, all the things that we wish that we could have done. We would have had the warning, but we didn't. And so now we're doing the best we can, and we're just kind of getting through. And literally, if we just refresh ourselves and say, what can we do to get kids and adults excited about learning again? The answer is ownership. The answer is choice. The answer is allowing each other to make decisions about our learning. That's what student ownership is. I talk about it in the book quite a bit, because often we do students who are historically disenfranchised a major disservice by just telling them what to do or keeping things, less rigorous and skill and drill and all those things. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. We need to boost ownership. We need to treat children and our fellow colleagues, if we're facilitating PD, as equals, right? That's what Confianza means, is that mutual respect and trust. So making sure that we're asking kids, what do you want to learn? Like I'm asking my students right now, can you help me design this project? What did you think about the learning today? Feedback, reflection, choice, contributions, leading a lesson, having kids take ownership in all those ways is going to give provide a lot of gains. And I love hearing ideas like that. So if you have ideas, I'm seeing some in the chat here. And I'm just going to pause here and take a look. One piece, Emily Francis, thanks for asking. Love how you tell that there's a difference between checking and activating background knowledge. I read about this concept years ago with David and Yvonne Freeman, just sort of giants of the language acquisition world. But it's good for ELL students, but again, it's good for all students. The difference is, if you're activating background knowledge versus if you're building background knowledge, you either had it and it just needed to be or translated or sort of reinvigorated, or maybe you need to be reminded that you knew that, versus building it as you didn't have that. So here's an example. I am making assumptions here that you have some background knowledge of synchronous learning if you're listening, but you might not. So if you do have some knowledge of it, I'm trying to activate your knowledge. Like, hey, have you done this before? Let's connect to that. What went well? What could we do to make it better? Versus building it, which is, this is brand new to you. So you might need synchronous learning 101. What is synchronous? What is asynchronous? Let's start from scratch. We don't want to assume that a learner either doesn't have it or has it. We want to be able to be flexible enough to address both areas. I said it before and I'll say it again. Students who have been historically disenfranchised have been given a great disservice by minimizing their abilities and maybe saying, oh, they don't know English, or they're a racial minority, or they're an immigrant, or any number of subgroups, so they can't do it, or they don't have it, or they're a blank slate. I'm just going to tell you that's not true, right? Everyone has funds of knowledge. Everyone has something to contribute, and they may not have all the background knowledge. But if you just, you just kind of ask, like, do you have any background knowledge in this? Have you ever been to a zoo? If we're talking about zoo, if you haven't, what do you know about animals? Like, there's always something to try to bring in and at least try to activate. And if there isn't any knowledge there, then we start building it. But again, just kind of being aware of that. And I hope that helps, Emily. Really appreciate your question. The final tip here, before I give you some examples of some more concrete situations that people have asked me about, is to centralize the resources. So if we're doing asynchronous and synchronous, like for example on Google Classroom, keep it all contained there, right? Have links to the other apps and links to the discussions in the meetings, set up the calendar, maybe week by week on your stream, for example. Adults and kids alike, where was that link? What invite? What app? Like, it's confusing. There's a lot. And because I've been doing this for a long time and I'm always learning how to get better, I can't say enough about centralizing it. So here's an example. This is a picture of a tweet from a client out here in the East Coast. And you can see the tweet on the left, thanks to Diane Conley. And on the right, you can see us having a Zoom meeting, but also using our platform. At Confianza, for professional learning communities, courses, and coaching, we use Teaching Channel Plus, which is a really phenomenal dynamic video-based platform. Not only does it have the biggest classroom video library in the world, a world class, it also has closed courses. And as a strategic partner of Teaching Channel, we're able to use this platform to centralize the resources. And for this team, for example, in Haverhill Public Schools, I'm training the coaches. We have a closed coaching course just for them. And we know when the meetings are and what are we doing, and here's our toolkit, and sharing our work and discussion and outside links, videos, it's all there. So it's not running around and, hopefully trying to piece it all together. It's like, here we go, and let's keep it organized. So I do recommend that, and I think people are learning that on their own, often the hard way with the kiddos. They're having this app and that app, and and it's not, it's just not effective and cohesive. Some teachers have a week at a glance for their kids. I try to do that for my students consistently, same things that we do every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so they can see what's happening and we're not just going to lots of different places. And back to a tip that people had asked me to specifically talk about was this idea of graphic organizers. We know how important graphic organizers are, both for students and for teachers and other educators when we're doing PD. And there are ways of bringing graphic organizers in to synchronous learning and asynchronous, of course, too. So I'm going to share some tips that I've done, and I'm sure there's other great ideas out there. On the left is an example from my students that I'm teaching. I mentioned that I'm doing math and literacy groups, one group online for first and second graders. So what I was able to do here is actually take binder sheets. I sent them to the families, and then I even printed out or had them print out the worksheets. But of course I call them tools because they're not just worksheets. We do problem solving, we do oral language around them, we do lots of different things here. Our place value chart. Whoops, there you go. Nice and dirty because we've been using it a lot. And I've got it for math, I've got it for literacy. Here's our word work one. And that way the students have it. And then I even set up my iPad over here as a document camera so that I can show them what I'm writing. They can see my face teaching and listening and watching my speech, but then they can write it at their house. Not everybody can do that. I know a lot of teachers, a lot of us have like 30, 40, hundreds of students, but perhaps there's ways to make the graphic organizers easy. I know when I was in the classroom, I often didn't have enough paper working in urban schools, and certainly didn't have enough of my own budget that I want to spend on paper, and I'd rather spend it on books. So I would make the students in their notebooks draw the graphic organizer. So here's a really easy example of one on the left. This is a prove it second grade math activity, but the kids could kind of draw a circle for show it and then keep a space for write it. So one idea there for you. And then on the right is the digital example. This is actually from our most popular course called Strong Homeschools Connections. And the family engagement plan is one of the key assignments there. So in our course, people get this template of the family engagement plan, but they have to make a copy of it. So we keep the master and we have directions in the course. Make a copy. You can keep it in Google Drive. You can download it as a Microsoft Office tool, Microsoft Word. You can use it as PDF. You can print it out. I don't care. We don't care how you do it, but as facilitators, we want to see you complete the graphic organizer, complete the assignment, and then upload it. So then we're always having this cycle and looking at what people are doing. And so those are some ideas for using graphic organizers. Moving along, I'd like to share a very important tip for synchronous learning, which is always have a home page for welcoming people to an event, especially when it's a formal event. So I'm doing a lot of webinars, getting invited to speak a lot, and working with my own clients this spring as we're transitioning here to this exciting online environment. And I have this up for groups, especially that I don't know, and groups that I'm working with the first time. And I set up my settings on my Zoom so that they're all muted. They see this message and they can just relax until we start, right? But it gives them a landing page. It gives them a landing pad. And I just project it from my slides. If I know the group really well, I might not have this because I want to see their faces and chit chat. And much like we might hang out, in a classroom before we start teaching, if we're working with colleagues or we're having a PLC. And so that's an important thing that I do recommend. And I just use the same one all the time, but sometimes I mix up the graphic or mix it up just to have fun with it. And with that, I was doing finishing up a Zoom course with a network of change agents for our Change Agents program in Missouri. And my colleague, America Beard, was sharing some of her Zoom norm examples. So she actually posts the norms more explicitly. She actually has many norms that she posts and helps people, that are new to this space and might not realize backlighting is an issue, or to mute yourself if you're going to talk to your, put your dog in the room or talk to your husband, all the things that we're doing on our homes right now. Again, making the invisible visible might seem like common sense, but let's make sure that it is common and we're helping each other be successful online for kids and for our colleagues alike. A couple more points I want to make before we wrap up. This is a time more than ever to interweave social emotional support. I've watched this field of SEL develop, and it's exciting, but it's also challenging because it shouldn't be an add-on, right? Supporting kids and supporting each other in work-life balance, in managing and regulating our emotions and our social needs should be something that we do every day as part of how we relate to each other. Again, the whole concept behind the word confianza is a cultural concept, and it means mutual respect and trust. And as I talk about in my book, and as I talk about every day when I do my work and my team does our work, it's at Confianza, is kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's the same with adults. So if I'm working with you, it doesn't matter how smart I am or what degrees I have or what strategies I have for you. If you don't feel safe in our coaching experience, if you don't feel like your social emotional needs are met, we're not going to make that many gains. So let's make sure it's interwoven. That's another silver lining that I'm really excited about right now. And I'm hopeful that it continues, that it's not an add-on, but we're literally honoring people and their social emotional needs as part of what we do for all of us. So with that, here's an example, and this is from my own teaching. I mentioned the first and second graders that I'm working with. I'm super lucky too. Love those girls. And we call this the emoji game. And of course, as it is with the little ones, you call anything a game and it suddenly becomes something fun. We don't do it every day. We do different versions of social emotional check-ins every day, but this one is popular. And as you can see here, not only do they match the emoji, but they also use sentence supports, right? So I want them speaking and writing in complete sentences and supporting their claims with evidence. So that's that. And I'm excited to hear from you. And I love following people online, sharing in the chat here and sharing ways that we do support each other, both kids and adults, in our social emotional needs. Again, not an add-on. Let's integrate it and let's never go back from that. So with that, I just kind of like to wrap up here and share with you some of the things that we do. If you're not familiar with Confianza, we love connecting with people in lots of different ways. We've got our Twitter account, we've got our Facebook account, we've got our website that's filled with tons of free and open source articles, tools. If you're looking for something more, our framework is here on the bottom with the family and student engagement all the way to our foundational touchstone of anti-bias education as part of our mission and the dual language biliteracy piece that we're developing. That's where we come from. All of our content comes from that research-based framework. Our services are above. So we do have remote workshops, been doing that for years, really excited to continue that work now during this pandemic and helping people with their online PD and their online teaching and learning needs. As well as I showed you before, a little sneak peek into our Teaching Channel Plus platform, which is super dynamic and holds our courses and also holds our customized support that we do for districts and networks and groups, as well as coaching, which is what I really love to do, leadership coaching and supporting teams and deepening their practice and really embedding professional learning. And then finally, the guidebook, which I'll be teaching about shortly in my next webinar this afternoon around, how to make that language lens explicit for all of our students, as language and culture is part of what we do. It's part of who we are, certainly part of who our students are. It needs to be in every classroom, whether we're teaching online or face-to-face. And I would say whether we're teaching students or we're teaching and working with each other as adults. And so with that, I hope that you enjoyed this live and archived video presentation from me, Sarah Ottow. You can follow me if you'd like. Love to follow you back on Twitter at Sarah Ottow. And if you're interested in reaching out, you can find us by emailing us at info@ellconfianza.com. I'm wishing you all the best, health, first and foremost, happiness as much as possible in this bizarre new space that we're in, and most of all, just innovation and teaching and learning. It's about time we move forward and really embrace more modern ways of teaching and professional development. So with that, I wish everyone the best. I'm going to take a quick look at the broadcast stream here. Thanks. It was great to be here while some of you were eating your lunch. I'm glad that you could you could be here with us. All right. Yes, SEL should be interwoven. Yes, Emily, that is so true. Nice to see you, Sarah Saeed. Yes, honor each other, kids and adults. Nice to see everybody here. Big shout out to you joining us live. And again, if you're joining us in the archive, feel free to let us know what you think through our different social media channels. And all the best to everyone. Take good care. And we will see you later. Thank you. Bye.